Today I'd like to continue our study on the preeminence of Christ. This would be the fourth installment. And once again, let's read from Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 through 18. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist. And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he may have the preeminence. Well, as we've seen from our study, in verse 15, Jesus is called the image of the invisible God. The word image there means the icon, the true, accurate, and complete representative and manifestation of God. And then in the second half of the verse, he is called the firstborn, the prototokos, highest in rank. Not speaking of firstborn, but it is primarily used of rank, the highest in rank. That person who would be the inheritor. And therefore, he is the primogenitor, the legal inheritor over all creation. And he is the very creator of the universe, both physical and spiritual. And that universe was created for him. And we see that in the last half of verse 16. All things were created through him and for him. And it is in this creation that he is glorified and that his eternal power is revealed. Romans chapter 1 verse 20 speaks to that. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. And then next we read verse 17. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist. The preposition in this verse, in verse 17, before, points backwards in time, speaking to the pre-existence of Jesus Christ. He therefore is the pre-existing one. John chapter 1 verses 1 through 3 speak directly to that. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. 1 John chapter 1 verse 1 speaks as well to that. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our own eyes, which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled concerning the word of life. And then Jesus, speaking to the Pharisees, said this in John chapter 8, verse 58. And Jesus said to them, most assuredly I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. And it is this Jesus who created. And it is this Jesus who was before creation. And it is this Jesus that holds all things together. In other words, all things consist because of him. Colossians chapter 1 verse 17, let me read it once again. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist. The New American Standard translates consist a little bit differently. Let me just read it. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. The point is simply this. He is the constituting and conserving cause. Now, the particular word that is used in the Greek for consist is sunestikon, which means to cohere or to be held together. And so this word speaks to the fact that Jesus Christ is the controlling and unifying force in nature. And Christ is not only the one through whom all things came to be, but also the one by whom they continue to exist. It is Christ who sustains. It is Christ who upholds. And it is Christ who is preventing the universe from dissolving into chaos. We may not understand how God holds the whole universe together, but there is clear evidence in nature that science has already seen with the study of the atom, where we have the nucleus of an atom that is positive and the electrons that go around that nucleus that are negative. And it's because of those attractions, those polar attractions that are there, those magnetic attractions that are there, that hold that atom together. And if the atom had not been created like that, it would have just immediately spun off and split up into its multiple parts in one huge nuclear explosion. As a matter of fact, in 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 10, it speaks of a point in time at the end of the age, at the judgment, when the earth is destroyed and a new heaven and earth is made. And the wording that is used there sounds eerily similar to a nuclear explosion. Let me read it to you. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burnt up. Until that day, all things are held together. All things consist because of the person of Christ. And when he comes in judgment at the end of the world, and the world is destroyed where the elements melt with fervent heat, it does sound like a nuclear explosion. It does sound like now Jesus has released that consisting power and the whole of the world is destroyed, leaving room for him to create a new heaven and earth for the saints of God who will dwell with Christ forever in glory. What a hope we have in Jesus. And how great it is to know that he holds the universe together. And if he holds the universe together, he is fully capable of bringing us to completion in salvation in Jesus Christ, as Philippians 1:6 speaks. And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to its completion at the day of Jesus Christ.